There we go.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 9th of June, 2020. Oops. Oh, Michael, will you let Ben in? I'm not host anymore, so I can't. Thank you. Great, and now you can watch the attendee list for me.
Sure.
Cool. So, a reminder to folks to add their names to the doc, and also, please help take notes. We'll probably be able to crank through the agenda and then maybe get back to some of the code of conduct process discussions that we had, that we've been having. So before we get into the agenda, do we have any announcements or anything? I know that Jory's not on, so I don't know what to expect there. Anybody else got any announcements?
I guess just we can remind people that the conference is coming up in a few weeks, so make sure to plan for a great week then.
I think, go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Joe. I'll go after.
I was going to say, I think that the schedule has been worked on, and I expect that we'll be able to release that fairly soon, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But I think that that's coming.
The Collab Summit schedule,
Yeah, the Collab Summit schedule.
Yeah.
Thank you for
the conference schedule's been published, so that's.
Yeah, it's exciting. Brian, what were you going to say?
Just a really quick update, this complete non sequitur from this discussion. So a while back, I believe it was Node Project had asked about a DUNS number, which is necessary for registering installers and things like that. Just wanted to give a heads up that we called in today. We've gotten the name updated from Node Foundation to OpenJS Foundation. So if you are involved in that process and you need a DUNS number for some reason or another, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to Robin and we'll take care of you.
Great, thank you. Cool. All right, so anything from like the board side or anything? No? We
have a big call planned for later on this week where we'll be going through a number of the things which we've been discussing in various different forums, discussing a couple of potential revisions to the bylaws. We'll be going over the crowdfunding guidance, which the board has been discussing at length for, as you know, quite some time. This is something that's been a long-standing agenda item. Be discussing some requests from the AMP project and discussing DCO remediation. So it'll be an epic call. We got a lot of stuff covered.
All right, great. And then there's someone waiting in the attendees. Michael, if you want to make me host, that's all right.
Yeah, sure. I'll make you host again.
You're probably working on minutes as well, and
yeah,
I've gotten good at keeping my eye on that attendee list. Cool. So let's see if we are to get into the agenda then. Yeah, the first agenda item is issue 559. Oh, this is my issue, CPC Collab Summit sessions. Yeah, I don't know which of these are in the schedule, which of these we should put in the schedule. If anybody has any thoughts, please feel free to drop them in this issue, and I will try to sort out what we have and perhaps any gaps that we may have, with regards to these sessions being in the Collab Summit, and see how they can work into the schedule. I think it would be great to hit on all of these, frankly, but I know there's kind of a lot going on, so we'll see.
Would it be helpful to define subpoints here? For example, in the standards working group session, do you want to cover explicitly like what we'd like to talk about over that period of time? For example, we're working on a liaison relationship between Unicode and OpenJS, which would fit within that context, which could be a bullet point within that time period. Should we define that now or what?
I think just figuring out whether we want to have a standards one to begin with and then add those sorts of bullet points makes sense to me. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe Ben, if you want to mention this in the standard Slack channel, just the idea of whether we should have a session or not, we can kind of go from there. And I'll try to follow up on any of the other ones as well.
And Joe, have you cross-referenced these on the on Jory's list on GitHub?
I haven't recently.
Okay.
And I can't remember actually if when I made this list, if I was looking at her list.
Okay, because there could be some that have been already submitted. So
yeah, and there may even be like some, CPC blocks that these could be slotted into. I just want to make sure that if we want to touch on any of these, which I think we really could, and
yeah,
that we have that time set aside. So
we're also having some ad hoc sessions in case things come up in real time. So some empty rooms that will be hosted. So
great. All right, so we'll figure it out. But if anybody has anything they want to add, please drop it in this issue, and I'll try to follow up on it. Cool. Thanks. Next up is the project charter review for AMP. I think that this is good to go. We just needed 2 approvals. Michael and I approved it. Feel free to take a look, other folks. But oh yeah, Toby's on the call here. We should be good here, right, Toby?
That's my understanding from the process on the CPC side.
Yeah, mine too. So shall I close this?
That's what I was going to suggest. I mean, I think last time we said if there weren't any objections, we had enough approvals, we should just close it.
Yeah,
Works for
okay,
me.
doing it right now.
I'm not going to complain, right?
All right, 2 approvals, no objections. Good to go. Cool. As done. Thank you, Toby. Appreciate you putting that together. Great. So next on the agenda is issue 549. This is the CPC chair election. As we have been discussing, the idea was that over the last week, we would have nominations, and starting today, we would have an election. I'm the only one that's nominated. I don't know if I should leave it open until the end of the day. I mean, I think we were thinking that it would be like meeting to meeting. So, but I don't feel comfortable really making that decision necessarily, since I'm the only one, nominated. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?
And I guess we said we'd leave it open a week, and everybody should have had a chance to be aware. So if you're the only one who's volunteered, my take would be that you should be acclaimed.
Who's eligible? Is it only regular members or only CPC members or anybody? Just curious. I don't have any plans.
Yeah, no, I knew at one point, but I'd have to look and find out.
I have a feeling it's possibly voting members. You can just check that quickly though.
Any member from one of the non-impact projects can self-nominate. Oh, wait, sorry. Sorry, that's not the right place to be looking. Where is this?
Okay, so the CPC chair shall be one of the voting members and will be selected by the CPC members through consensus, or if necessary, a vote is described in the section titled voting.
All right, so
That's
it's a
what's
voting
in the
member.
charter. Yep.
Yeah.
Why don't we just decide this through consensus at this point? I mean,
Yeah.
Decide which?
like there's one nominee.
Yeah, yeah, that.
Let's
Got it.
just decide that like we're super.
Does anybody object to the only nominee?
Right.
Right.
I mean, that has been doing a fantastic job for like the last year, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
if
Thanks,
someone
Cody.
was really into running, I mean, they can raise their hands now or just.
I'm
perfectly
I'm okay
happy.
with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to nominate the man standing behind you.
Yeah, Rick. He
Yeah.
actually he helps me a lot, so he's my right hand man. Is it my right? Yeah, my right hand. You know, I don't feel comfortable commenting, but I'm happy to just continue on. And I guess if we want to tweak the requirements for the chair, that's something too. I don't know if it needs to be a voting member going forward or what have you, but we can work on that as well.
I mean, maybe it's just a matter of, like, if there'd been multiple candidates, we would have had an issue that said, let's have a vote. Maybe just to let other voting members who aren't here. I assume you already updated the issue saying you were the only nominee today?
No, not today, but I
Or,
nominated yesterday. I tried to
okay.
leave it open for a bit.
So, I mean, maybe for the consensus seeking part of things, we should just say, you know, there's only one nominee. Unless there's any objections within the next week, we'll consider you reelected. Right, that's kind of consistent with the consensus. If somebody has an objection, they can speak up. Otherwise, we assume, and people can
Okay.
+1 as well, you know, if they want to as well.
So essentially, if there are no objections over the next week, then next week we would consider it final.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that sounds appropriate.
Okay.
I mean, it's a hard job that no one but you wants to do. So.
Yeah.
Luckily, the people I work for want me to do this job, or are happy that I'm doing the job. So it's good they give me time.
That's awesome.
We'll continue it. We will consider, just making a quick note. Cool. All right, so I made a note there. Should be good. Moving on. As I mentioned earlier with chatting with Brian, we have an issue 543. Should outgoing voting members become regular members? We've basically decided that they should. Brian has a PR open. It touches on governance. So we could have consensus in a meeting, but I don't think that we do today. And I'm not sure we did last week. We just decided to leave it open for the 14 days. So we can merge that in tomorrow and then close this issue. Unless anyone has anything to add to that, I will continue on. The OpenJS Collaboration Network is the next item. This is issue 474. Michael, you want to give us an update, if there is anything?
Really, the only update is there are some additional comments and asking for clarification and expanding of some of the text, which I haven't had a chance to do, so I will do that. Sort of some requests before it lands at stage, I think it was going to stage 2. Before it lands there, it was requested that we do these updates.
Cool. Let me see, where is that staging PR attached to this? It doesn't look like it is. Should maybe find that and mention it here. Sorry, I'll just do this real quickly. Related issue. There we go. All right, cool. I'll try to take a look at the comments here that Miles dropped in. And great, we'll keep that moving along. Thank you, Michael. Next on the agenda is the second director seat. Brian has Brian Warner has assembled a document that goes over some of the information around the board seat. And if I understand that correctly, oh, it looks like you just dropped a PR in there. Do you want to comment, Brian? Where are you?
I was on mute. This is live reporting on the spot. I just pushed this about 3 minutes ago. But basically, it is a document which lays out kind of what the board does in general and what the expectations are for a community board member in terms of representing their community, as well as the time commitment and so forth. I think the main thing to keep in mind here is that this is a general set of outlines. The estimates are general. Some months were more busy, some months were less busy. It all kind of depends on what comes up during the course of the person's tenure. By and large, though, for the folks who do end up being the community board representatives, you do get a good deal of support from Robin. You'll get a good deal of support from Rachel. You get a good deal of support from me, and we're basically we'll work with you as the conduit between the board and the CPC and the communities that you represent. Is that good? Good introduction, Joe. Anything else?
Yes,
I should cover in this?
absolutely. That's good.
And this is great. Thanks for putting that together. Super
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah, you're welcome. Very welcome. Please feel free to make tweaks. I mean, if there's something here that isn't clear, you can poke me and I'll push a change. But Robin and Joe and Michael and Chris and I have all had a look at this, and hopefully it's reasonably comprehensive.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's very helpful. I appreciate it. So I don't know if we had decided what we do after this. Maybe leave it open for a week and then figure out. I think that we need to really figure out what the process is going to be here and what the parameters are of filling this seat. So I don't know if people want to think about that for a week, look at the document, and we can hash that out next week, or comment in this issue. What are people's thoughts?
Michael, you're muted. It looks like you're talking.
Sorry, I was just saying, I think my recollection is we wanted this so people could take a look at it, figure out if they wanted to volunteer, if we had any other volunteers, and then that would inform this group's decision in terms of what they wanted to do in terms of the process for selecting the second seat.
Correct. That's what it suggested.
I
I
suggest
think your
giving.
go ahead.
Sorry, I suggest giving folks a bit of time to actually read through this and consider it before moving forward with any kind of decision, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, people need time to take a look and make that, basically is make that decision or figure out if it's something that's interesting.
Yeah, I think we should set a deadline of a week or two for people to self-nominate or get nominated based on this, and then that gives us still that puts us at the end of 23rd of June, and we want to decide by July, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
So maybe a week to review and decide if they want to do it, and then that gives us 2 weeks to decide how we're going to vote, if there is a vote that needs to happen and all that.
Do we think that we need to document the details of this? And if so, is that going to slow us down? Like who can nominate and what the process looks like? Is some of that touching on like governance, for example, charter even?
Well, we'd already decided it's either from Node or one of the other no, I don't remember if we decided. What did we decide?
I don't think we decided anything. I think it was kind of like we got into that discussion that we as a CPC can choose what makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I mean, I think at this point it felt like we had sort of noodled on the idea of like, well, if someone's going to do this, they should already I felt at least a precursor to being on the board today should be that you're actively involved with the CPC, because otherwise, like if you just come in and say, hey, I want to be on the board and I haven't done anything for the foundation at all, it's, it just feels safer to me to do that, but I don't know, maybe that's creating an obstacle. But
I mean, you know, the other aspect of that is people won't vote for that person.
true. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, we can just say it's strongly recommended that you have that experience.
Agreed, though.
My
Yeah.
recollection of where we left this is that we were waiting for the document that got PR'd in 10 minutes ago. And then this would enable people who might be interested to step up to take one of the community seats to do so, to announce themselves. And then we could figure out what is the scope of candidates that we ought to be even considering.
Yeah. So maybe we just need to publicize this and say, this is out. We have this decision coming up. If you think you might be interested or know someone that might be interested in filling this role, you have about a week to nominate them in some way. I don't know, that's pretty fast, but I know we're trying to do this before the seat lapses, right?
If there is an interested party, then if they don't know yet that this is going on and what we talked about last week or isn't present at this meeting, it's kind of, are we really going to vote for this person?
Yeah. Did you have something, Jordan? No? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that sentiment, Emily. I'll just say that there's not a lot of diversity in our members already. Not that I think that this board seat should be a way to improve that. You know, I don't know. I'm just trying to think through what's the best way to go forward on this.
So that's a really good point. But then if you want to do something about that, you have to do specific outreach.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just not going to happen by magic.
Yeah.
And so that implies a longer than a week delay, which I would actually be in favor of, but it's something to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that work probably just needs to happen more, or at least initially, at the kind of member level, right? You know, regular voting member level participation.
All the time at all levels.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So how about we publicize this document, and you know, if anybody wants to take a stab at a draft of what the requirements and process would look like for the director seat, the second director seat, drop it in that issue, and then we'll take a look at it again next week. That seem reasonable?
The one other thing I would say we might want to do is actually ask about both seats, like who's interested in or willing to run for both seats, because that could influence the decision as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's just my one extra thing is, like, if we say, hey, the election for these two seats are coming up. One is the one's outlined as this, the other one's outlined as we're still figuring out. But if you're interested in either one, you know, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should have an issue that lumps the two together that we can refer to.
I mean, I'm sorry, like this, like I've been following along this conversation for a while, and I'm still confused as to what those two seats are. So we probably need to be more clear about this. Or
Yeah,
I need to pay more attention, like either way.
One seat is written as from the voting members. We elect a chair and we elect a board representative for the CPC.
And the other one is a node seat. Okay.
The other one was
Yes.
was the node seat for the first year, and the CPC is free to choose how they elect it for the following years.
And we're both electing those at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, that was not my understanding.
Yeah, they both come up for re-election. I think end of July or end of June. I forget we agreed on a particular date, but it's one of those two.
Yeah, I dropped a link to the section in the charter as well that touches on.
Thank you for clarifying. Sorry about this.
No worries. No worries.
I was just thinking, because they were, because the elections for both will be coming up, it's worthwhile knowing Like if we have one candidate who's willing to do either, or if we have 10 candidates that want to do the two of them, then that may affect our choice for the second one, right?
Yeah.
Like how we decide to do it.
Okay.
And the roles are slightly different.
Well, one is the CPC director, and I'd have to look at this elections link here to see exactly what that is. And then the other one is the one that we're trying to figure out here.
So I think
Community
the
director,
answer,
I think, is the title.
right. I mean, I think the answer is the first one is, representing the CPC because it's elected from the CPC voting members. For the second one, the decision was, for the first year to make it a position representing the Node project.
Right.
Going forward, that's part of what is up for the CPC to decide what is that role in terms of, and I think it was mentioned, I think there is some wording in there that's a community director. So but I think we do have some room in terms of saying, what do we want the role to be?
I pasted in the, oh, it's not letting me paste. This is too much text. The elections section into the chat. And trying to paste in the board representation part of it as well. It won't let me. Well, you got the link. Folks can take a read. All right, so should we just have, should we open an issue that is for electing both of these seats and make it clear what the two seats are in the issue? And we can, refer to that issue as we approach an election cycle on this.
That's good.
That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I like in particular the way that you're going to make clear in that issue what the community seat is about.
Yeah, please, whoever opens that issue. Do we have any volunteers that would like to open that issue and take what's written here and move it over to the issue?
Well, I'm not sure we can make it clear, right? Like, I think the idea was we were going to see who's interested.
Yeah.
And then that was going to inform some of the further discussion, because we haven't said this is exactly what we want it to be yet.
Yeah, like status quo was it'll just continue with Node. Optionally, it could open up to sort of all the impact projects, or even optionally, it could expand to the entire community of what we are. And we were kind of just going to decide based on what the interest was, what to do with it. I mean, I think originally it was, but before the merger, Node had a lot more experience doing this stuff than any of the other projects. So it was really nice to have their help and just give them the seat so that we could have some continuity and some experience doing that. And then from here, I think from here, it's like, do we want to just keep it the way it is, or do we want to rotate it a bit between people that are interested? So.
Yeah.
Not to mention that we can have continuity and still have a Node person actually having that seat, with the seat being a community seat.
Right.
I'm still of the opinion here that the number of potential candidates for either of these two seats is so really honestly small that we're better off, now that we have some slight description of it and of the tasks and expectations, if we could get some tentative signs of interest being shown towards, for example, Joe, or about to be re-elected chair, it would really help in being able to drive the process here on how do we structure this election so that it gets the result that is fair for all, and actually takes into account the reality of who's actually interested in the job.
So sort of a closed nomination for now, is that what you're suggesting?
I'm saying I would be interested in tentative signs of interest being communicated to Joe so that when we, for example, meet a week from now or later, we can know whether we really are in a situation where we have more than 2 persons who might be interested in either of these roles. Because if the grand total of interested people is 2, then it kind of, why are we really bothering about talking about the other details when we only have, in the end, 2 candidates to choose from for 2 positions?
Well, the reason was that last year we kind of punted on defining this, and the goal was after a year to actually define what we wanted it to be. So it is more process than expecting 50 candidates to emerge, I think. But yeah, I agree with you what you're saying though.
The specific wording, can't remember if it's in charter or the governance, that says is that every single year we get to refine the meaning of this process and this role. We don't need to get locked in for anything more than a year at a time.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it's an interesting idea, Emily. And if we wanted to go down that path, people could write to me, and then next week in the private session, you know, I could share more info. We could talk about it privately, I guess. I don't know. Does that make sense?
To me, yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as long as it's publicized clearly in the issue itself, so people that are not on this call today know how they're supposed to actually reach out, or what they're supposed to do to nominate.
Yeah, and is it sort of a soft nomination, like expressing interest?
Definitely
Would
a
that be the
soft
phrasing?
thing, because all of this is fuzzy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
So-
the main thing here is just to make sure we're doing things transparently, and I think
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, and I think Emily's got a point too. Like, you know, if we can cut down on the bike shedding to move this forward, at least for this, you know, round, that makes sense, I suppose. So I can drop a comment into that particular issue, the second director issue, which is 438. That's and I won't do it now, but I'll just say. Express interest in the seat to me at my email, and I'll expand upon that at the end of the meeting.
I'd like to, if we could expand it perhaps in the Slack channel or perhaps an email. We do have a number of very diverse folks who are very active in their projects, maybe just not the CPC. So
Yeah, that's a
try to
good
be
point.
a little more, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Definitely, we should drop it in Slack, and you know, if Jory or someone, I suppose I
Shoot an
can,
email,
yeah, shoot out an email. That would be great. All right, cool. So that's, I guess that's a path forward. Let me just say here, drop in Slack and send out email, promote, and discuss in private next week. Okay. All right, cool. Excellent. So we can move on from there, unless anybody wants to explore this further. Thanks for everybody's participation there. The next item is foundation-wide copyright guidance. I'll just call on you, Toby. How are things going?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I promise you that once AMP is over the fence, I will spend the time that I need to make that happen. And I again apologize.
No worries, no apology needed. That sounds like a good plan. And then responsible security disclosures. I don't know if Michael dropped this copy in here, but it's PR is ready at stage 0. It's the pull request is 489. I can drop it into the chat once it loads here. This PR is basically stage 0. And I think we've actually already been working on this for a while. And there's a question here, do we need to go through all the stages? My suggestion would be that we do skip a stage, because I think we've already been kind of working on this for a while. And, you know, have a resolve this PR and then open a new one to go to stage 2. I think, do I have the staging open here somewhere? I thought I did. I thought I pre-opened it, but I might have lost it.
Yeah, I just, I've just been finding we spend like at least 2 or 3 weeks or more on each stage. And if we don't get any comments, this one is pretty straightforward. Like it's, a page of text with some recommendations. So I think one stage review should probably be enough.
Just to add some context, Michael, I dropped the link into the chat. Stage 0 is initial proposal, which I think we already had. And this proposal is actually more like a draft proposal, which is stage 1. And then going to stage 2 would be accepted proposal. And then stage 3 is complete. So do we have any objections to merging this and then opening a PR to move it to stage 2, skipping over stage 1? All right. Well, if anyone does have any objections, we can talk about it in the PR, I suppose.
Yeah. So I guess my hope was we've got enough, I think, approvals now. Unless there's objections, we should land it today. And then it doesn't sound like anybody's objecting to just opening it as a stage 2 PR, which we could do and just call out in there that we're skipping one, and people can object there if they want to.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we don't have a lot of people on the call, but I still think that that's fair.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Michael, is that something you'll do, or ping?
Sure. Yeah, I'll land it, and I can do a PR to move it from one stage to the next one just to help it get going.
Okay. All right. And then that brings us to a code of conduct issue. I'll drop this in the chat for folks. This is onboarding, provide explicit feedback on what, and in quotes here, escalation path is and how to implement it, plus temporarily address in the onboarding checklist. Tierney opened this up 19 days ago. We've had a bunch of discussion here. Michael, you've been in the discussion. Do you want to get everybody up to speed and go from there?
I think this is the one that we were potentially going to spend a bit more of the time on, which is basically like, do we need to have an escalation policy, an escalation path or not? It's currently documented in our governance, with the code of conduct panel being the people it would be escalated to. It requires projects to like include in their COC an email address. Basically here's the escalation email address which we have set up and we have people on. There's been some, I guess, confusion, difficulty in finding that in the governance. So maybe there's some concerns about clarifying that, but also just fundamentally, there's been some issues raised about whether we should have one or not. And that's kind of, we had discussion on that, but we didn't close the discussion to say, what are our next steps on that front?
Yeah. We were going to drop into a private session in 5 minutes, so I don't know, how much we can dive into this or not.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to schedule like a meeting of the COC working group, or sometime it would be some way it would be good to schedule enough time to come to the yes or no and next steps in terms of what we need to do.
Yeah, we've been using the CPC meeting time ad hoc each week, depending. I wonder if next week we should focus on this, but the question mark for me is the CPC chair election, which could be a 3-minute discussion, and the board seat discussion as well.
I think it would be great to plan to meet as like as a COC specific thing. I would love if it's been one of this has been a thing that I've been championing hard, but at the same time, I'm also a little underwater with different things that we have going on with the summit and the conference coming up. So I think I'd love to kind of dig into this, but I will be honest that I don't know that I have the capacity to do it justice until after our conference.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same sort of boat, you know, for some overlapping reasons, but not entirely. But I wonder if we should, because how many CPC meetings do we have before the
I
conference?
think one.
We have
Yeah, we
one
only have
more.
one more.
Yeah.
Before, and so we could definitely take time on Friday on cross project day, you know, for this conversation. That would be great.
Yeah, and Jory, I dropped an issue into the chat there. This is 559 in the CPC repo, where I was asking about CPC related collab summit sessions. Maybe you can help me flesh this out a little further. I know we're both kind of crazy busy, but if we can, I don't know if we should drop some blocks on that day, or if we should just leave it open and try to work through it, or how we should go about it.
I mean, the simplest thing might be for us to just create these spaces inside the platform, because that's very simple to do. And we can put it on the schedule. And if people, you know, are available and prepared, then we can have these sessions. And if not, then we just didn't have enough.
Yeah. Okay, I think that makes sense. So we would just pretty much block out some time for each of these sessions and see how they come together. Okay. All right, great. Let's do that. Yeah, and we're kind of at the time we're going to drop into a private session, so maybe now's a good time to do that. Sorry, I feel like I'm at the end of my energy cycle or something, and I'm out of coffee. But but yeah, so let's do that. Let's call it a wrap on the agenda, and we will plan to just do another agenda session next week. And you know, I think that we may want to block out a good chunk of time for code of conduct at the Collab Summit, and really dig into these things, and any prep work we can do before then would be great. You know, identify what are the key things we want to work on, and what are the parameters of those issues. You know, like what are the different ways that an escalation path would be followed, and who are the people involved, whether it's a reporter or a project or the CPC or the panel or what have you, and kind of do all that prep work. All right, cool. So it's 2:50. We'll drop into a private session. Anybody who's not a member on the call, I know all of you, and you should PR yourself in if you haven't already. And yeah, thanks for joining, and we'll drop into private. I'll stop the stream. Thanks, everybody.